When I saw the wolf standing on the ridge, my heart froze, because in his eyes, I saw a promise. Not a threat, not hunger, a promise. I'd walked that trail 100 times before. The forest was my second home, the place I came to breathe when the world felt too loud. That morning felt ordinary, sky a pale gray, air sharp with the bite of winter. I remember thinking I might find elk tracks, or maybe a fox darting through the snow, but I didn't expect this. It started with a shadow on the snow, just ahead of me. I thought it was a tree branch at first, swaying low. Then I saw the blood, a thin trail, dark against the white, winding like a warning deeper into the pines. My stomach tightened. I knew what it meant. Out here, blood in the snow almost always means one thing: poachers. And I'd heard the rumors. Guys with rifles driving the back roads, shooting what they wanted, leaving what they didn't. I followed the trail. Don't ask me why. Maybe because a part of me always hoped to catch them, to stop them. Or maybe because I wanted to believe people couldn't be that cruel. The scent hit me before I saw her, that coppery tang of blood mixed with fur. And then, she was there. The she-wolf lay on her side, her coat matted crimson, eyes half closed, glazed with that stillness that makes the whole world go quiet. There was a hole in her chest, clean shot, no tracks but hers leading in, and then 2 deep boot prints leading out. I just stood there, knees shaking, staring at her. She was beautiful, even in death. Gray fur streaked with silver, paws like carved stone. I remember whispering something, I don't even know what. An apology, maybe. To her, to the forest, to myself. That's when I felt it. That prickling at the back of your neck when you know you're not alone. I turned slow. At first, I didn't see anything. Just trees, snow, silence. Then my eyes caught movement, shadows melting into form. 1, 2, then 5 shapes, slipping from the timberline like ghosts. Wolves. They didn't make a sound, didn't growl, didn't move fast. They just came, and then stopped. A half circle around me and the body of the she-wolf. Their paws barely dented the snow, but their presence hit me like a storm. I froze. Every instinct screamed to back away, to keep my eyes down. Wolves don't usually attack people, I knew that. But this wasn't usual. This wasn't a pack just passing by. They were looking at me, and God help me. It felt like they knew, not just knew what had happened, but knew I was human, knew what humans had done. One of them, bigger than the rest, with eyes the color of burnt amber, stepped forward. He didn't snarl, didn't bare his teeth. He just stood there, close enough that I could see the frost clinging to his whiskers. And those eyes, they weren't wild eyes, they weren't animal. They were something else, something that made my heart stop cold, because they weren't looking at me like prey. They were looking through me, like they were searching for something inside me. Guilt, truth, I don't know. But I swear on everything I have, in that moment, I felt like I was on trial. The silence was the worst part. The forest was so quiet, I could hear the snow creak under my own boots. My breath puffed out in clouds, but theirs didn't. They didn't move, just stared, watching, weighing me. And then, as sudden as they appeared, the alpha, at least I think he was, lifted his head and let out this low, mournful sound. Not a howl, not quite. More like a sound you'd make if you'd lost something you couldn't live without. It went through me like ice water. The others joined in, soft, almost like whispers carried on the wind. I've heard wolves howl before. This was different. This wasn't a call. This was grief. I don't know how long I stood there, listening. Seconds, hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. And then, just as quietly as they came, they began to fade back into the trees, one by one. But not before the last one, the alpha, turned his head and locked eyes with me again. And in that look, I swear I heard words, not spoken, but understood. This isn't over. I stayed there long after they vanished, the snow swallowing their tracks like it wanted to erase everything I'd just seen. I thought it would end there, but it was just the beginning. I should have left the moment they disappeared. Any sane man would have turned around, gone home, and never spoken of it again. But I didn't move. My boots felt frozen to the earth. The snow still held their prints, like dark wounds in the white. My eyes went back to the she-wolf. Her body lay there in that unnatural stillness, framed by pines that seemed to lean closer, as if to listen. And then I heard it, a soft crunch behind me. I turned, and my breath hitched so hard it burned. They were back, the same wolves, stepping out of the trees without a sound. No rush, no panic, like shadows that chose to be seen. Their eyes locked on me, and the air around us thickened until I could feel it pressing against my skin. And then, one of them moved forward, not the alpha. A lean gray with a scar slashed across its muzzle. It padded slow, each step careful, deliberate. My pulse pounded in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was carrying something. At first, I thought it was a stick, but as it drew closer, the shape came clear, a frayed piece of rope, stiff and dark with blood. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack. The wolf reached the edge of my boots, and then it dropped the rope right at my feet, and it looked up at me, not wild, not empty. There was meaning there, a weight I couldn't bear. It wasn't just an animal anymore, it was judgment. That's the only way I can explain it. Like a verdict had been passed, and I was standing in the wrong courtroom. That rope, it wasn't random. That rope had tied something, someone, maybe a snare, maybe her. And now it was mine to see. I wanted to speak, to say I wasn't the one, that I didn't do it. But the words stuck like ice in my throat, because deep down, a part of me felt guilty anyway. Guilty for being human, for being part of a species that does this. The gray wolf backed away, silent as smoke, but its eyes stayed on me until it melted into the pack again. None of them moved to attack. None of them ran. They just stood there, a wall of fur and breath and raw power. And then, as one, they turned, not away from me, but toward the trees, their tails low, their steps soundless. They vanished, and I was alone. Alone with the body of a dead wolf and a blood-stained rope at my feet. I picked it up. Don't ask me why. It felt heavy, even though it was light as air, heavy with everything it meant. I thought that was the end of it. I told myself I'd never see them again, that this was just a strange, cruel moment in a cruel winter. If only I knew they had a plan. I couldn't sleep after that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that rope lying in the snow, saw those eyes staring through me like they could burn truth out of my bones. I told myself I'd leave it behind. I'd bury it, like a bad dream. But the forest, it didn't let me. 3 nights later, it started. I woke to a sound so soft I thought I was dreaming. A long, low note that curled through the pines like smoke. A howl, but not the wild chorus you hear when wolves claim the night. This was different. It was gentle, calling. I sat up in bed, every nerve awake. The sound came again, closer this time. It slipped under the door like a whisper meant for me alone. And then silence. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I waited for the echo, for anything, but nothing came. Just the heavy hush of snow pressing against the world outside. By morning, I convinced myself it was the wind, a trick of branches, anything but what my gut screamed it was. Then I opened the door. The forest lay still, washed in pale gold light. My breath fogged in front of me as I stepped out onto the porch. That's when I saw him, at the edge of the tree line, standing so still he might have been carved from the earth itself. A wolf. Not just any wolf, the biggest I'd ever seen. His coat was a storm of gray and ash, but what froze me were the scars, one slicing across his muzzle, another tearing down his shoulder like a shadow burned into his fur, and his eyes. God, his eyes were fire. We stared at each other across that stretch of white. My hands trembled at my sides, but he didn't move. He didn't bare his teeth. He didn't run. He just looked at me like he wanted me to follow. My heart was beating so loud I swore he could hear it. Every instinct screamed to grab the door, slam it, stay inside. But my legs, they twitched forward like they had a mind of their own. I whispered, "No," and stepped back. One step, two. The wolf didn't chase, didn't turn. He just held my gaze for what felt like forever. And then, slow as fog, he melted back into the trees. Gone. I stood there long after, staring at the place where he'd been, my breath breaking in clouds, trying to tell myself it was coincidence, just a wild animal passing through. But that look haunted me, and if I thought the forest was done with me, I was a fool. The sound of gunfire does something to you out here. It cuts the silence in half, sharp and mean, like a knife through your ribs. I was splitting wood when I heard it. Two cracks, close together, not the echo of a hunter's rifle at dawn. This was different, harder, closer, and my stomach dropped. I knew that sound now. The rope was still on my table inside. I hadn't thrown it away. Couldn't. Every time I touched it, something in my chest clenched like a fist. And now, those shots told me I was too late to bury the past. I grabbed my coat, my boots, and I ran. The forest swallowed me whole. Snow flurries whipped against my face as I pushed through the pines, following the sound, praying I was wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. After a mile, I smelled it. Not smoke, not pine, something heavier, a sour stench that crawled down my throat and sat in my gut. Death. I found their camp in a hollow near the frozen creek. Just canvas shreds and blackened logs. No men, no guns, just emptiness, except for the smell. The snow was torn up like something violent had happened there. Boots, drag marks, dark stains soaking through ice, and that's when I heard the crunch, not from behind this time, from everywhere. I turned and froze. They were there, not one, not two, the whole pack, sliding out of the timber like smoke wearing fur, their eyes locked on me, burning through the cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My pulse slammed so hard my vision blurred. They closed in, slow and silent. Not a snarl, not a sound, just this deliberate ring of muscle and breath. And then, something I'll never forget. They didn't attack. They started pushing me, not with teeth, not with force, just moving as one, their bodies shifting to block every path but one, the way out. Each time I tried to step aside, a shoulder slid in front of me, steering me like a current steering a branch. And then it hit me like lightning. They weren't protecting themselves. They were protecting me. From what? From who? My mind spun with questions I didn't dare speak. Every nerve screamed at me to run, but somehow I let them guide me. Step by step, they drove me back through the trees, toward the open ridge where the sky split wide. When I finally stumbled free of the timber, my lungs felt raw. I turned to look, but they were gone. The forest swallowed them like they'd never been there. I stood there shaking, breath tearing from my chest, thinking maybe I'd just cheated death. Maybe luck had saved me, but I didn't know what they were about to do. I told myself it was over. That night, I sat in my cabin with the rope coiled on the table like a dead snake, staring at it while the wind howled outside. Wolves don't do this, I kept saying. Wolves don't plan. But deep down, I knew better. 2 days later, I heard the trucks, engines growling like beasts that didn't belong in these woods. I froze at the window, breath fogging the glass, and there they were, 3 men in heavy jackets, rifles slung across their shoulders, stomping through the snow like they owned it. The same ones. I knew it in my gut. I don't know what made me follow them. Stupidity, maybe, or something heavier, a pull I couldn't fight. So I grabbed my coat and trailed them into the trees, keeping low, my heart thudding like a drum. They were laughing, big, ugly laughs that made my skin crawl. And then I heard one of them say it, about the she-wolf, like it was nothing, like killing her was sport. My fists clenched so hard my nails cut skin, and that's when the forest changed. It started quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your ears until you hear your own blood moving. Then came the shapes, sliding between trees, gray and white ghosts, silent as smoke. 1, 2, 5, 10. The men didn't see them, not yet. But I did, and my knees went weak. They were circling, not wild, not reckless, methodical. The poachers trudged on, and then one of them noticed a flicker of movement. He swung his rifle up, muttering. The others cursed, and then the wolves began. Not an attack, not yet, just this slow, relentless drive, flanking them, herding them, forcing them toward the frozen creek. The men didn't even realize it until they hit open ice. I swear my breath turned to stone in my lungs. The wolves spread wide like a noose tightening. And then, one howl split the air like a blade. The alpha. It was the signal. The pack surged as one, not chaos, precision. They drove the men backward, step by desperate step, until the first boot hit a crack. The sound, sharp, like bone breaking, shot through the clearing. Ice groaned, and then it shattered. The men went under screaming, rifles clattering across the slick surface. Water swallowed them like a living thing, black and merciless. The wolves didn't leap, didn't tear. They just stood there at the edge, watching, silent, waiting for the water to do what it does. And I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe what I'd just seen. It wasn't rage, it was justice. When the last ripples faded, the alpha turned his head, slowly, toward me, and I felt it again. That weight, that wordless sentence passed from something older and wiser than I'll ever be. Then they vanished, just melted into the timber like they'd never been. I stood there shaking, breath like shards of glass, telling myself this was the end. The wolves had taken their revenge. The debt was paid, but they weren't done with me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ice breaking, heard the screams vanish under black water. It played over and over like a reel I couldn't turn off. By morning, I convinced myself it was over, that what I'd seen would stay locked in those trees forever. I made coffee, sat at the table staring at the rope I still hadn't thrown away. Its fibers were stiff now, brown with dried blood, and I hated how much it felt like a message. That's when I heard the sound on the porch. Not loud, just a soft scrape, like claws on wood. My heart slammed into my throat. I stood, slow as frost, and walked to the door. When I opened it, the cold hit me like a slap, and then I saw it. Lying on the porch boards, crusted with ice, was a piece of torn fabric, dark green, soaked through with something dark, a jacket sleeve. I didn't have to guess whose. My stomach turned to stone. I looked up and froze. They were there, the pack, standing just beyond the tree line, half shadows in the morning mist, silent, still, watching. And then the trees parted. The alpha stepped forward. His breath curled in clouds, his eyes fixed on me with that same fire that burned through every thought I had. And in his jaws, God help me, was the rope, the same rope. He came close, close enough that I could see the frost clinging to his whiskers, the scars carved across his muzzle like battle marks. My legs trembled, but I didn't move. He dropped it at my feet. The rope lay there, stiff and ugly against the white. And I swear, in that moment, it wasn't just an object anymore. It was an order. It was like they were saying, "You saw. Tell the truth." My chest clenched so hard I couldn't breathe. I wanted to speak, wanted to promise, but the words stuck like ice in my throat. The alpha held my gaze for a heartbeat that felt like forever. Then he turned. The pack followed, sliding back into the timber until the woods swallowed them whole. I thought that was it. I thought they'd leave now. That their message was delivered, their justice done. But they wanted more than silence. The snow fell silent that morning, thick and heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. I'd been pacing the cabin, the rope on the table cutting into my thoughts like barbed wire. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. And then I saw them. Through the window, shapes moving against the gray timberline. 1, 2, then all of them. The pack, standing there like carved shadows, staring at my door. My chest locked. Every instinct screamed to stay inside, but something deeper pulled me out. The cold slapped me as I stepped onto the porch. The wolves didn't move, just watched. Then, without a sound, they turned and slipped into the trees. And God help me. I followed. They didn't run. They didn't rush. They moved with this strange patience, glancing back now and then, like they were making sure I was still behind them, like they wanted me there. We walked deeper and deeper until the world I knew disappeared behind the pines, and then I saw it, the ridge, the place where it all began, where her body had lain in the snow like a fallen queen. The alpha stood there, waiting, his fur glinted silver in the weak sun, his breath rising in clouds. When I reached him, he didn't move, just stared at me with those eyes that held the weight of centuries, and then he lifted his head and howled. The sound split the air, raw and mournful, a blade of sound that went through bone and marrow. The pack answered, voices twining like smoke around the trees. Then, as one, they turned. The alpha's gaze burned into me one last time, and then he vanished into the timber. The others followed, their shapes melting into shadow until the forest swallowed every trace, and I was alone. They left me standing there, with a truth too heavy for words. I thought it was over, thought that howl was goodbye, until the sound came from behind me. It was soft, fragile, barely a whimper. I turned, and my breath shattered in my chest. A pup, small, trembling, limping through the snow like each step cost him the world. His fur was a storm of gray, matted with ice, one ear torn, one leg dragging like a broken branch, and in his jaws, God help me, was the rope, the same rope. He came right up to me, no fear, no hesitation. He stopped at my boots, lowered his head, and let it fall at my feet. Then he looked up. Those eyes, they weren't wild, they weren't empty. They were everything. Pain, memory, a trust so deep it carved me open from the inside out. My knees hit the snow. Tears burned hot down my face, stinging in the cold. I reached out, hands shaking, and touched the rope. And in that moment, I understood. They'd given me the last piece of their story, and with it, the weight of truth. That day, I learned, nature remembers, and nature demands the truth. I don't know how long I knelt there, my breath hitching like broken glass. The pup turned and limped back toward the trees, never looking back. And I made a vow, not to hunt, not to kill, not to look away, to speak, words that hit harder than fists. Because if you think animals can't understand, you've never looked into the eyes of a wolf. Ting,